On the night of the 26th of September 2002, a ferry pushed north through the dark Atlantic off the coast of the Gambia. Just before midnight, a squall caught her broadside. The water was black. The deck began to lean. Then it leaned harder. From the first tilt to full rollover took about 5 minutes. No alarm sounded, no call reached the shore, then nothing. 8 hours of silence. The Senegalese inquiry's final report recorded 1,863 dead. It was the deadliest peacetime ferry disaster Africa had ever seen, and the second deadliest anywhere. The Joola was a lifeline, the only safe link between the Casamance region and the capital, Dakar. Nearly 1,928 people crowded onto a ferry built to carry 536. More than 600 of them were women. Survivor testimony records that only one woman lived, Mariama Diouf, 4 months pregnant. The Joola had not held a valid sailing license for 9 months before the night it sailed. The people with the power to stop it never answered for it in any court. To understand why so many people boarded, you first have to understand the map. The Casamance region sits in Senegal's south. Another country cuts it off from the capital. The Gambia slices clean across Senegal following its river. Traveling by road meant crossing that foreign border, and those roads were not safe. A separatist movement had fought the government since 1982. Their war left the eastern roads dangerous and unpredictable, so an entire region leaned on a single boat. The Joola was built in Germany in 1990. It was a ferry certified to carry 536 passengers, but its hull was flat-bottomed, made for shallow rivers. It still crossed 285 miles of open Atlantic, twice a week. The armed forces ran it, not the civilian sea authority. That gap meant the normal safety rules never applied. A French inspection firm had given it only a temporary pass. It was marked with warnings and expired at the end of 2001. It was never properly renewed. For nearly a year, the ship sat in repair. One of its engines was replaced, then it returned to service, or 16 days before that night. 16 days later, far too many people would climb aboard. The Joola slipped away from the Ziguinchor dock in the early afternoon. On paper, 1,034 passengers held tickets, but small children rode free, and no one counted them. Then the ferry stopped at Caravan Island. More travelers pushed aboard, more cargo, more children. By the time it reached open water, nearly 1,928 people were aboard. The ship was built to carry 536. That is more than 3.5 times too many. It was already leaning 8 to 10 degrees before it left the river. That is a tilt you can feel under your feet. No port official stopped it. In command that night was Captain Issa Diarra. He knew the ship's balancing tanks were broken. Those tanks were meant to move water and hold the ferry level. They no longer worked. One of its 2 engines had only just been put back in. Diarra steered all of it into the open Atlantic. Out there, the weather was already turning. At about 11 that night, a squall came down on the open Atlantic. An hour before, Captain Issa Diarra's crew had radioed Dakar that all was fine. The ferry had already been leaning before it cleared the river mouth. Then the wind caught the side of the ship. The Joola rolled hard to one side. Her ballast tanks, the parts meant to keep her steady, were not working. Nothing could pull the ship back upright. She rolled through 90 degrees and turned completely over. From the first lean to full capsize took about 5 minutes. Nearly 2,000 were aboard a ferry built for 536. Most were trapped below as the deck became the ceiling. Not one lifeboat reached the water. There was no time, no emergency beacon switched on, no call for help reached the shore. Out on the black water, the ferry simply went quiet. More than 600 women had boarded that ferry. One of them was Mariama Diouf. Survivor records say she was 4 months pregnant. As the hull turned over, she forced her way out and reached the surface. She clung to the wreck through the whole night. She was the only woman who lived. The upturned hull stayed at the surface for hours. Dawn brought no Navy ship and no rescue. Search planes would not take off for 13 hours. Gambian fishermen reached the wreck first in small wooden boats. They pulled 64 people from the sea. By the count of the Senegalese inquiry, 1,863 people died that night. Most never left the hull. The sea took almost all of them within minutes. Only one peacetime shipwreck in modern history had ever killed more. Every fault that drowned them had been written down, long before anyone stepped aboard. The Joola was rated to carry 536 people. That night, nearly 1,928 crowded aboard, almost 4 times the limit. The broken ballast tanks that should have kept her upright, an engine replaced just weeks before sailing, the sailing license that had lapsed 9 months earlier. None of these were accidents. They were documented conditions known to the operators before a single passenger stepped aboard. These were choices made by people, not a failure of nature. For 8 hours after the ship rolled, no alarm reached anyone on land. No distress beacon fired and no mayday ever crossed the water. The first word came not from the Senegalese Navy, but from Gambian fishermen who found the wreck at dawn. They pulled the living from the water by hand. Rescue aircraft were not sent for roughly 13 hours. By then, most who had survived the capsize were already dead, drowned, or lost to the cold. Among the families waiting for news was Aliou Cissé, a Senegalese footballer then playing for Birmingham City. He lost 12 relatives in a single night. Of the roughly 1,928 people aboard, only 64 survived, fewer than 1 in 20. Survivor records confirm that of more than 600 women aboard, only 1 came home. Her name was Mariama Diouf, and she was 4 months pregnant. The wreck still lies on the seabed, about 21 meters down, 35 kilometers off the Gambian coast. It has never been raised. For more than 1,000 families, there would never be a body to bury, no grave to visit. Now the only question left was, who would answer for the dead? The Senegalese inquiry placed primary blame on Captain Issa Diarra. He had gone down with his ship, and the dead cannot stand trial. Presidential records confirm President Abdoulaye Wade dismissed his prime minister, transferred military officers, and convened an inquiry. The state offered each family about 7,600 euros if they waived every future claim. Not one living official was charged. Approximately 30 European nationals were among the dead, which gave France legal grounds to open its own investigation. French magistrates placed Mame Madior Boye under formal investigation for involuntary homicide. Army Chief Babacar Gaye had testified there was no point sending aircraft 9 hours after the ship sank. Then, the very structure that caused the disaster absorbed it. Because the ferry was military property, every official had acted for the state. In 2014, French magistrates closed the case. Sovereign immunity. The exemption that let the lapsed license go unchecked now shielded every official from prosecution. More than 2 decades on, no one has been convicted in any court, anywhere. Babacar Gaye was later appointed head of a United Nations peacekeeping mission. The wreck was never raised. The accounting was never. Mariama Diouf was pulled from the Atlantic that night, 4 months pregnant. She was the only woman to survive out of more than 600 aboard that ship. The wreck of La Joola sits in 21 meters of dark Atlantic water, unraised, unrecovered. Army Chief of Staff Babacar Gaye told the inquiry there was no point dispatching rescue aircraft. The wreck lies there still. These are the disaster tapes. The dead don't get a voice. We try to give them one. If that's worth something to you, subscribe. New tape every 3 days.